and the government's finances start to backfire. Company profits have fallen, so corporation tax receipts were down a lot in January compared to the same month last year. There were fewer people in work, so the government's income tax take was lower. House sales have plunged, so there was much less coming in from stamp duty. And with unemployment rising, spending on benefits like job seekers allowance has gone up.
The problem is that we have rising government spending at the same time as we have falling tax receipts. And when you put those two things together, it makes for a very large deficit indeed, and that's exactly what we've seen from the figures which came out today.
So the government's accounts are flooded with red ink. Borrowing for this financial year is set to be even higher than what the Chancellor predicted last November, at nearly £78 billion. That seemed high enough. So how do governments borrow? Well, they take money from investors in return for IOUs, certificates like this. This bond was issued in the 1930s. Nowadays it's all electronic. Right now there's a healthy demand for this sort of investment, but that could change if markets get concerned about the state of Britain's public finances. There's a risk that investors may decide if the UK economy faces greater risks, they won't want to buy our government bonds.
It could get to the stage, especially if there's no signs of recovery or borrowing gets further out of control, that investors will not well regard British debt, and they'll turn in any case to more like US debt or possibly German debt. It is a risk that the Chancellor should keep in mind, that in fact investors could actually go on strike and say we're not going to buy British debt.
The Chancellor argues his finances are stronger than some other leading economies and that he does have room to borrow more. But there's another problem looming in the shape of Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyds, which owns HBOS, banks part-owned by the government. Statisticians say they'll be put on the public sector balance sheet, and that'll add £1 trillion or more to public sector debt. It'll only be removed when the government sells its bank shares. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
There was more evidence of the recession's impact